Hi, I'm Jay Fitch, and today I want to talk to you about when people must leave the organization. There are really two parts to this. One, when you're terminating employees, and the second part is when you're the person being terminated. So when you're terminating employees, I want you to remember two rules. First, the golden rule: treat others as you would want to be treated, that is, with kindness and respect and preserving their dignity. And the second rule is that if it's a surprise to the person being terminated, probably the wrong person is being let go. You might ask, well, what are the reasons that we should terminate employees? If we boil it all away, there's only two reasons. The person is either unable or unwilling to do the job. If the person's unable, then as a director or manager, it's our job to make sure that we've done everything humanly possible to make them able. And if they're simply unwilling, then they, in fact, must leave. I once had to terminate someone for refusing to wear socks. They said it was against their religion. As ridiculous as that was, we had a written policy and went through progressive discipline, and ultimately it wound up going to the Civil Service Commission. When the gentleman came into the commission meeting with no socks on and a suit, commissioners kind of understood what the problem was. Needless to say, the termination was upheld. Now, let's talk a little bit about the process. I think whenever we terminate someone, our goal needs to be our goal. It may not always happen, but our goal should be that we would treat that person in such a way that they might even shake hands with us when we're done. There are 6 components to this process piece. One is documentation. You've got to have the paperwork to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. Second is, when do you terminate somebody? If it's a critical incident, you don't let them remain on duty. You suspend them during the investigation. But typically, I tend to terminate people at the end of the business day where there's privacy. And that's the next component. The third component is where do you do it? Typically, I do it in a conference room with witnesses so that there's not any awkwardness of them getting out of my office. And again, the end of the day when there are fewer people around is helpful. The fourth component is, how do you communicate with others? And we've all seen that proverbial email about, so-and-so has left the organization to pursue other career opportunities. We have to be thoughtful about communicating both internally and externally. The fifth component has to do with exit interviews. Exit interviews are always a good idea, preferably handled by a third party or the HR folks, not the person who's conducting the termination. And the sixth component of the process that I like to think about is, how do you deal with references? Now, typically the dates of employment and whether the person is eligible for rehire is about what you can say in most states. I never give a positive reference to someone that I wouldn't want taking care of my family. So it's an important process, and sometimes directors will give references. So it is important. The second part of what I wanted to talk to you about today has to do with when you're the person being terminated. And here's an assignment for you. While you're listening to me, I want you to take a piece of paper and write down the left-hand margin of your page the words "leave classily," LEAVE CLASSILY. And we're going to walk through what that an acronym stands for. The L stands for listen, don't speak. A wise person once said that in a termination, when there may be an awkward silence and the first person who speaks typically loses. Remember, the E stands for everything is negotiable. For example, you may really wish that you could have resigned instead of being terminated. That may be negotiable depending on the situation. The A stands for ask for what you want. Ask for time to consider the offer. The V stands for very good attorney. You know, you want to be, whether you plan to sue or not, you really want to make sure you've had the best advice available. The E in leave stands for exit as though you're returning, even if you know you're not. Now let's move on to classily. The C stands for COBRA and other rights. COBRA stands for continuation of health benefits. It's a federal law and you're entitled to that. The L stands for libel and slander. Libel is defamatory material that's written. Slander is defamatory material that's verbal. Don't do it. The A stands for attitude. Attitude is critical because acceptance is the key to moving on and being prepared for another position. The first S stands for sign nothing on the spot. The second S stands for think about, it says for subordinates, feelings of loss. And you got to think about that because they're going to be grieving. If you've been a popular leader, there may be some grief on the part of your subordinates. The I stands for involve your family and your network. They're going to be really helpful because no matter what happens when you have to leave an organization, you can become depressed or upset by it. And your engagement with family and the network around you not only can provide you support, but may help you in your next position, find your next position. The L stands for legacy you've left behind. Remember the good things you've accomplished. It's much better to focus on the important things that you've done and you've accomplished rather than when you're down at the end of this process. And the Y stands for you. Remember, you have a future. You're not the job. You're a living human being, and you do have a future when this is all done. These are just a few thoughts on when people must leave the organization. Have a good day.